It's Sophie's choice for many South Africans. They have to choose between water and electricity or food. This is according to a study by Public Affairs Research Institute. Let's discuss the report now with Tracy Ledger. Dr. Tracy Ledger from the Institute. Thank you, Doc, for your time. Just tell us a little bit more about the report and what it's found.
Good morning. So the report looked at the issue of affordability of basic services, especially for poorer households. And I think we have to remember that 50% of all South African households are classified as poor in that they live below the upper bound poverty line. And about a quarter of South African households, that's nearly 4.5 million households, don't have enough income in order to purchase sufficient food. So the original 1998 white paper on local government was very clear that one of the most important roles of local government was to deliver affordable access to services, because access is made up of physical access, but also whether or not you can actually afford to buy the service. And what we found is that as a result of the prioritization of the cost recovery model in local government, a significant number of poor households, in fact, cannot afford to purchase even the minimum amount of basic services. And then added to that is a general failure of the free basic services delivery policies to actually reach most of these poor households. And this is having a very severe impact on childhood malnutrition, household food insecurity, through the fact that households have to allocate significant percentages of their income, up to a quarter of their income for very poor households, to paying for basic services like water and electricity.
Well, government, for instance, when it comes to electricity, they, enforce the user-payer approach. So are there any recommendations in this report as to how we can deal with the matter of poor households not having to pay for these services?
Absolutely, and it goes back to first principles. One of the basics underlying our socio-economic transformation strategy is supposed to be that services should act as a way of reducing poverty and inequality by raising living standards and by allowing people to engage in livelihood and economic opportunities that require electricity and water. But when we price these things, especially electricity, out of the reach of poor households, what we're doing is we're actually entrenching poverty and entrenching inequality, and we're basically condemning these households to stay in poverty forever. So our recommendation is that probably about half of South African households should have access to a meaningful level of minimum services at no cost whatsoever. And then those households will have more disposable income to spend on food and other basic necessities.
Just very quickly as well, in terms of the recommendations, what do we do then with companies such as Eskom, etc., saying municipalities owe them billions? Do we just scrap that debt, or do we only expect that certain South Africans will pay off that debt?
I think what we need to do is we need a complete overhaul of the way in which we have structured the delivery of basic services, because the current system is based on, as you said, quite correctly, on everybody in the system paying. But the bottom line is that at least half of South African households cannot afford to pay. And to simply insist that they must pay is pointless. A poor household can't manufacture money from nothing. And we are creating a large number of socioeconomic negatives by forcing households to choose between food expenditure and electricity expenditure. So what we need to do is rethink the entire model of how we deliver services and who pays for them and who pays how much for them and how we fund the difference between those.
And just lastly, Doc, there's also that there's policies, right, around services, etc. So I guess these policies are actually not doing much to, alleviate pressure on the poor and to make sure that we eradicate, poverty.
Yes, so we have a free basic services policy which aims to give households a very small amount of basic services. It's 50 kilowatt hours of electricity every month, 6 kilolitres of water and basic sanitation, which doesn't meet household actual requirements, but still it should be a means of alleviating some poverty. But we've got a current situation where 10 million households are funded in the national budget every year to receive these goods, but only about 2 million households actually receive them. And that's because of serious problems within local government, where municipalities are not registering households as indigent. And the value of those benefits that poor households are not getting is at least 30 billion rand a year. And that then households must pay out of their own pocket. So certainly as an immediate step, we need to make sure that the free basic services policy, for which there is money in the national budget, is actually being implemented as it was envisaged.